That envelope, white, perfumed, edges trimmed in gold, sat on the kitchen counter like it didn't belong to my life. It had his name on it, Mr. David Carter. No and wife. Just him. I thought it was another work event or one of those charity galas his office loved throwing. But when I turned it over, I saw the sender's name printed neatly in cursive. With love, from your wife, Rachel. My heart didn't stop. It didn't race. It just paused, like it couldn't make sense of what it was reading, because I was his wife. For 10 years. I stood there with my hands smelling faintly of detergent, my fingers still damp from folding sheets, and I read that line again. Your wife, Rachel. It was a wedding invitation. He was getting married. Before I tell you how everything came undone, you should know what my life looked like before that envelope arrived, so you can understand what it meant to lose it. David and I met in the most ordinary way, at a friend's birthday dinner in Atlanta. He was that kind of man who spoke softly but carried presence in every word, the kind that made you feel like you were the only one in the room when he looked at you. I was 31 then, working as a nurse, living alone, not particularly searching for love, but not avoiding it either. When David asked if he could walk me to my car that night, I said yes without thinking. He was kind, steady, patient. Our love didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like a slow sunrise. We dated for 2 years before he proposed, quietly in our kitchen over takeout. He said, I don't need a grand gesture, Mia. Just you. Every morning and every night, and I believed him. We married in a small church, with my mother crying through the ceremony and his family smiling politely in the front row. His parents lived out of state. They seemed formal, distant, but I told myself that was just their way. The early years of our marriage were simple, beautiful even. I worked long shifts at the hospital. He worked in construction management, often out on projects for weeks at a time. When he came home, he brought me little souvenirs, a keychain from Texas, a scarf from Colorado, postcards with cheesy quotes. I didn't question his absences. I trusted him. Because that's what love looked like to me. Faith in the spaces you couldn't see. Our home was modest, a 2-bedroom with soft yellow walls I painted myself. He used to tease me for humming when I cooked. He'd sneak up behind me, wrap his arms around my waist, and say, one day I'll record that sound, my wife's hum, and play it when I'm on the road. Even now I can hear it, that laugh of his, deep and certain. The sound of a man who knew how to make a woman feel safe. The first odd thing happened in our 7th year of marriage. He came home late, later than usual, and when I reached for his jacket to hang it up, he pulled it away too fast. It wasn't angry, just nervous. I remember the faint scent of perfume on the collar, something floral, expensive, not mine. When I asked, he laughed and said, "You're starting to sound like your mother." And I laughed too, because the alternative, believing he might be lying, felt too heavy. That's how I handled things back then. I smoothed them over. I convinced myself love was about endurance, about waiting things out. He started traveling more often, said he was managing multiple projects. Sometimes he'd call me from what sounded like a restaurant, saying he was out with clients. I'd hear a faint clink of glasses, laughter in the background, and I'd picture him sitting with colleagues talking about blueprints and deadlines. Every time he left, I made sure his suitcase had clean shirts, snacks, the little lavender sachet he said reminded him of home. I played my part, the loyal wife. That Thursday morning, when the wedding invitation arrived, I wasn't looking for trouble. I was just folding laundry. The envelope must have been slipped in with the mail while he was at work. It was sealed with a sticker shaped like a gold heart. Inside was a glossy card. 2 names printed in elegant font, Rachel Montgomery and David Carter. Join us in celebrating our love. Saturday, June 17th. I don't remember sitting down, but somehow I did. My knees felt weak, my throat dry. There was no mistaking it. It was my husband's full name, and it wasn't an invitation to a vow renewal. The address listed was in Savannah, 3 hours away. For a long time, I just sat there at the table, staring at the card. The world around me went quiet. The only sound was the slow ticking of the kitchen clock. I must have read that card 20 times, hoping it would change, hoping it was a prank or a mix-up or anything but what it looked like. But I'd been a nurse long enough to recognize the body's signs of shock. Shallow breathing, cold fingertips, that surreal clarity where everything sharpens painfully. I didn't cry. Not then. Instead, I picked up my phone and called him. He answered on the second ring, his voice warm and casual. "Hey, baby, everything okay?" I heard myself say, "Yeah, just wondering what time you'll be home tonight." He said he'd be late. Another meeting. Another project. "Okay," I whispered. "Drive safe." When I hung up, my hands were trembling so hard I nearly dropped the phone. That's when I noticed the return address printed faintly on the envelope's back. R. Montgomery, 12 Willow Street, Savannah. Something inside me, something old and buried, shifted. I'd been quiet for too long. So I wiped my eyes, took a deep breath, and said out loud, "No, not this time." Because maybe love is endurance, but it's not blindness. And that day, I decided I was done being blind. The first clue, suspicion, and beginning of the discovery. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch with that invitation on my lap, tracing the gold letters with my thumb as if touching them might make them less real. My mind played every memory I'd ever had with David, searching for cracks, something I'd missed, something that could explain this. There were little things now that I thought about it. Times he'd turned his phone face down. Weekends he said he was working overtime but didn't answer my calls. The sudden need for privacy, something he never used to demand. But the truth is, you don't see what you're not ready to believe. When morning came, I called in sick to the hospital. I told them I had a fever. Maybe I did, the kind that burns from the inside. Then I went to my small wooden desk in the corner of the living room and started searching. Google first. Rachel Montgomery, Savannah. It didn't take long. Her name came up on a bridal registry site. The same date, the same groom. The same man I had breakfast with every Sunday. Her profile picture stopped my breath. She was smiling, radiant, standing in front of a lake holding a man's hand. His face was turned slightly away, but I didn't need to see it fully. The curve of that jaw, the dimple by the mouth. It was him. David. My husband. I think that was the moment the denial snapped. The numbness gave way to something raw and electric. Not rage, not yet, but a kind of horrified clarity. I clicked through her page, each photo like a needle in my chest. There were comments from friends. "Can't believe it's finally happening. You two are perfect together." And one that made my stomach twist. "Can't wait to meet your little girl next time, little girl." He had a child. I didn't even realize I was crying until I felt the wetness on my chin. 10 years of marriage, and I'd never been able to conceive. We'd tried. We'd tried. But the doctors said there were complications. David had held me through the nights I cried, whispering, "It's okay, baby. You're enough for me." All the while, he was raising a family somewhere else. I could have screamed. I could have smashed something. But instead, I just sat there, quiet and still, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of that same old clock. I remember thinking, how many lies can a person live with before they stop recognizing their own reflection? For 3 days, I pretended nothing was wrong. He came home like usual, smiling, kissing my forehead, asking what was for dinner. I cooked. I smiled. I asked about his day. Inside, I was watching everything. Every gesture, every glance. On Friday night, as he showered, I slipped his phone from the nightstand. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. He never used a lock, said he had nothing to hide. The messages were all there. "Good night, my love. Can't wait for forever. I told Mia I'll be gone till Sunday. You know how work gets. And the photo. Rachel in a white dress, standing in front of a church, his arm around her waist. The date on the message was from 2 months ago. They were already married. My fingers went cold. The phone felt heavy, like proof and betrayal rolled into one. When he came out of the bathroom, towel around his neck, humming like he always did, I was sitting on the edge of the bed holding his phone. He stopped mid-step. "What's that look for?" he asked. I didn't say a word. I just turned the screen toward him. For a moment, silence stretched between us like glass. Thin, sharp, waiting to shatter. Then he said very quietly, "Where did you find that?" "Your phone," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. He sighed like a man caught speeding but not surprised. "Mia, please, it's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing the room. "It's complicated." "Complicated?" I laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "You married another woman, David. You built another life. That's not complicated, that's criminal." He stopped, his back to me. "You wouldn't understand. Try me." He turned then, and for the first time in 10 years, I saw a stranger in his eyes. "I never meant to hurt you," he said. "It started before you and I were serious." Rachel got pregnant. Her family's old-fashioned. They forced a wedding, but it wasn't real. Not in my heart. "I loved you, Mia. I still do." The words landed like stones. "So you married me," I said slowly, "while still being married to her?" He didn't answer. "That's bigamy, David. That's not love. That's lying to 2 women at once." He looked desperate now. "I was going to tell you. I couldn't lose you." I stared at him. "You already did." That night, I didn't throw him out. I wanted to, God knows I did. But I needed proof, something that couldn't be brushed away by tears or excuses. While he slept, I took pictures of everything. The wedding invite, the messages, the photos. I sent them to my email, then printed copies the next day at the library. On Sunday, I drove to Savannah. I told myself I only wanted to see her, Rachel, to look into the eyes of the woman who shared my husband. But deep down, I think I wanted her to know too. I found the house easily. 12 Willow Street, the one from the envelope. A neat little blue house with a swing on the porch. Children's toys scattered in the yard. And there he was, David in jeans and a white t-shirt, mowing the lawn while a little girl, maybe 5 or 6, ran circles around him, giggling. He picked her up, spun her in the air, kissed her cheek. Then Rachel stepped out. The woman from the photos, holding a tray of lemonade. She looked happy, whole, loved. I sat in my car across the street, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. That's when I realized he wasn't living 2 lives. He was living his life. And I was just the shadow attached to it. That night when I drove back home, I didn't cry. I felt hollow, like every sound around me was distant, underwater. I made myself a cup of tea, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the spot where that first envelope had been. Tomorrow, I decided I'd confront both of them. Together. Because if he thought he could divide his lies, he was about to learn the truth. That deceit always comes full circle. The next morning, I woke up with a calm I couldn't explain. Maybe it wasn't calm. Maybe it was exhaustion wearing a mask. Either way, I knew what I had to do. I dressed carefully, as if I were preparing for something sacred, or final. A plain white blouse, dark jeans, my mother's cross necklace. I didn't want to look angry or broken. I wanted to look like the truth itself. Steady, undeniable. Before leaving, I wrote a short note and left it on the kitchen table. It said, "David, by the time you read this, I'll have done what you couldn't." Told the truth. Then I drove back to Savannah. The drive was long and quiet. The highway stretched endlessly, and I caught myself glancing at the passenger seat, where he used to sit during road trips, singing off-key to old R&B songs. Funny how memory doesn't know when to stop showing up. By the time I reached 12 Willow Street, the morning sun had turned the neighborhood gold. I parked a few houses down and watched the front yard again. The swing creaked softly in the breeze. Rachel's car was in the driveway. I sat there, gripping the folder on my lap. Printed photos, copies of messages, the wedding invite. Evidence of a decade of lies. Then I stepped out. When I knocked, Rachel opened the door halfway, cautious but polite. Yes? Her voice was warm, southern, the kind that made people trust her. Hi, I said quietly. I'm Mia Carter. She frowned, searching my face. I'm sorry. Do we know each other? I took a slow breath. No, but we share a husband. For a second, I thought she might laugh, the way people do when they think you're joking badly. But she didn't. Her face went pale. Her lips parted. What did you just say? David Carter, I said. You married him. So did I. 10 years ago. Her hand dropped from the door. That's not... She stopped herself, shaking her head. That can't be true. I handed her the envelope. This was sent to my house. She took it, her eyes scanning the writing, the address, her own name. Her fingers trembled. Where is he? I asked. In the backyard, she whispered. Then let's go. The backyard was filled with sunlight, the smell of cut grass, the sound of a child's laughter. Their daughter, his daughter, was playing with a small dog. When David turned and saw us both standing there, his face drained of color. Mia, he breathed, taking a step forward. What are you doing here? I didn't answer. I looked at Rachel instead. Ask him. David, Rachel said, her voice shaking. Who is she? He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I said it for him. His wife. Rachel turned sharply to him. Tell me she's lying. He rubbed his temples, muttering, I can explain. No, I cut in, my voice sharper than I expected. You can't explain 10 years of betrayal in a sentence, David. He looked between us, cornered. Mia, please. Rachel, listen. I never meant for this to happen. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Never meant for what to happen? To marry me? To have a child with me? Stop, he snapped suddenly, voice cracking. You don't understand what it was like. Oh, we understand just fine, I said quietly. You wanted everything. The comfort of one life, the thrill of another. But the truth has a way of catching up, David. Always Rachel covered her mouth with her hand, her shoulders shaking. You told me your first marriage was annulled, she whispered. You said she left you. He looked at her, eyes wet. I was going to tell you after the wedding. She stepped back, disgusted. After the wedding? After you made me stand in a church and promise forever? The little girl had stopped playing now. She was watching from the porch, confusion written across her small face. Mommy? She called. Rachel turned to her, voice breaking. Go inside, baby. When the door shut behind the child, the yard fell into silence except for the hum of distant cicadas. David tried again, voice trembling. Mia, please, we can talk. There's nothing to talk about, I said. I know everything. The marriage, the lies, the house you bought with her name on the deed. I even know about the joint account you hid. His mouth opened, closed. He looked defeated, smaller than I'd ever seen him. I stepped closer. I gave you 10 years of my life. 10 years of dinners, prayers, anniversaries, hospital shifts, and missed birthdays. All while you played husband somewhere else. Do you know what that makes me, David? He didn't answer. Your secret, I said. Your quiet little mistake you thought would never be found. Rachel turned to me, tears streaming. I had no idea. I swear I didn't know I believe you. I said gently. You were lied to, too. She nodded slowly, gripping the edge of the porch rail as if it were the only thing holding her up. Then she looked at him and said softly, Get out. What? Get out. He started to speak, but she cut him off with a glare that could have turned stone to dust. So he went, out the gate, into the street like a man with nowhere to go. I don't know how long Rachel and I stood there in silence. The air felt heavy, like the aftermath of a storm. Finally, she said, Do you want to come inside? And just like that, two strangers bound by betrayal, we sat in her kitchen across from each other with a sleeping child in the next room and a man's lies still echoing between us. She poured coffee. Neither of us drank it. How long have you known? She asked finally. Since Thursday, I said. The invitation came in the mail. She nodded slowly, eyes red. I should have known something was off. He was always leaving on business trips, never letting me visit his projects. He used to say the same to me, I said quietly. We both let out a sad, bitter laugh. It's strange. The moment you realize your pain isn't yours alone, it becomes something softer. Shared grief is still grief, but it breathes differently. She reached across the table and took my hand. I'm so sorry. I squeezed it. We both are. When I left that house, the sun was setting, the sky a soft, bruised pink. I felt empty, but also lighter. Because now, at least, the truth was out. There was no going back to who I'd been before. But there was no pretending anymore either. As I drove home, I rolled the window down and let the wind hit my face. For the first time in years, I felt something close to freedom, even if it came wrapped in heartbreak. The next few days passed in a blur. When I came home from Savannah, the house felt different. Emptier, even though all his things were still there. His shirts hung neatly in the closet, his watch rested on the nightstand, his mug sat by the sink. Everything looked normal, except nothing was. By Monday evening, he came back. I heard the car pull into the driveway around dusk. That same steady rumble that used to make me feel safe. I didn't move. He opened the door quietly, as if afraid of being caught by his own shadow. Mia? He called out softly. We need to talk. I was sitting at the dining table, papers spread before me, copies of our marriage certificate, printed screenshots of his texts, and the wedding invitation that had started it all. He stopped in the doorway when he saw the folder. There's nothing left to say, I told him. I already spoke to Rachel. He closed his eyes, exhaling like a man walking into his own sentence. She told me to stay away, he murmured. Said she needs time. Good for her, I said. So do I. He looked at me then, not the way a husband looks at his wife, but the way a guilty man studies a witness. Mia, please. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I swear to you, I never meant for it to go this far. I loved you loved, I said, my voice flat. You don't love people by splitting them in half. You don't build two homes and call both of them real. You can't lie every day for a decade and still call it love. He stepped closer. I thought I could fix it. That I could make it right someday, I shook my head. You don't fix lies, David. You bury them, and then they dig themselves out. For a long moment, he just stood there, hands trembling, eyes glistening. Then he whispered, I'm sorry. I nodded slowly. So am I. That night, I packed his things. Not with rage, not tossing or tearing, but carefully, the way you handle something fragile that used to matter. Each shirt folded, each tie rolled, each reminder of who he pretended to be sealed in a box. When he asked where he should go, I said, anywhere but here. He left before sunrise. I watched from the window as his car disappeared down the road. The silence that followed was heavy, but honest. It was the kind that tells you something has truly ended. The next morning, I called a lawyer. She was a woman named Clarissa. Calm, efficient, with a voice that sounded like she'd seen it all before. When I explained what happened, she paused for a long time before saying, "You understand this isn't just infidelity, right? It's bigamy. That's a felony." I nodded. "I don't want revenge. I just want the truth on record." Clarissa handled everything with quiet precision. She filed the annulment request, sent notice to the state, and arranged for the police to question him about his second marriage. By the end of the week, word had spread. First through whispers, then through neighbors, then through friends. In our town, secrets traveled faster than mail. People I'd known for years, the women from church, the couple next door, started looking at me differently. Not with pity, but with something like awe, as if surviving deceit was a badge of strength. One afternoon, Mrs. Daniels, our elderly neighbor, stopped me as I took the trash out. "Sweetheart," she said, gripping my arm gently. "I saw him leave. I always knew something wasn't right about that man. But you walk tall. You hear me? You didn't do nothing wrong." I smiled faintly. "Thank you." But her words echoed in my chest long after she went back inside. "You walk tall." So I did. Meanwhile, the world started closing in on David. Rachel's family, I later learned, confronted him too. And unlike me, they weren't calm about it. They reported him to the authorities, demanded annulment, cut him off completely. His company, the one that prided itself on family values, put him on unpaid leave pending investigation. Every lie he'd built had started to crumble, brick by brick. And I didn't have to lift a finger. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from him. No return address, just my name written neatly in his familiar handwriting. I almost didn't open it. But curiosity won. Inside was a single page. "Mia, you were the truest part of my life. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know I never faked what I felt for you. I was weak, selfish, and cowardly. I thought I could hold two worlds together, but I destroyed them both. Please take care of yourself. You deserve more peace than I ever gave you." I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer, and never looked at it again. Because I'd spent too many years defining myself through his words. Now, I needed silence, my own kind of peace. It took months for the noise to fade. The pitying calls, the courthouse hearings, the awkward apologies from mutual friends who had no idea. I went back to work at the hospital. At first, it was hard. Every patient's story seemed to remind me of loss. But healing, I realized, isn't about forgetting pain. It's about learning how to live beside it. Sometimes, in the quiet moments of the night shift, I'd think about Rachel and her little girl. I wondered how they were holding up. I never reached out again. I didn't want to reopen wounds that were finally closing. But one day, a small card arrived in the mail. No signature, just a simple line in neat handwriting. "Thank you for telling me." "I'm starting over too," I smiled, folded the card, kept it in my wallet. One Sunday morning, nearly 6 months later, I sat on the same porch where David and I used to drink coffee. The air smelled of rain, and somewhere a neighbor's radio played an old Sam Cooke song. For the first time, I didn't feel the weight of his absence. I felt the lightness of my own company. Because sometimes losing someone doesn't mean you've lost yourself. It means you finally found her. And that was worth every tear. But the story wasn't over yet, because healing doesn't end in silence. It ends when you find your voice again and decide who you'll be next. Spring arrived early that year. The magnolias bloomed outside my kitchen window, pink petals falling like small, forgiving prayers. 6 months had passed since everything fell apart. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't counting the days since he left. I was counting the ones I had reclaimed. My mornings were quiet now. Peaceful even. Coffee brewed just for one. Music filled the rooms he used to silence. And my laughter, the kind I thought I'd lost, started to sound like home again. One Sunday, I went to the farmer's market downtown. It was something David and I used to do together, but this time it felt different. Lighter. I stopped at a stall selling hand-painted mugs. The woman behind the counter smiled and said, "These are all one of a kind, just like people after they've been broken and glued back together. She laughed softly, not realizing how deeply those words hit me. I picked up a mug, white with a thin golden crack running down one side, mended with what looked like melted gold leaf. Kintsugi, she said. It's a Japanese art form, fixing broken pottery with gold. The idea is the cracks make it more beautiful. I nodded, running my fingers along the golden seam. Maybe that's what I am now, I thought. Kintsugi, cracked, but made whole with light. I bought the mug and took it home. Later that evening, I sat on the porch again, sipping tea from that same golden-lined cup. The sun dipped low, and everything around me glowed amber. It struck me then how healing doesn't arrive like thunder. It slips in quietly, in moments like this. In the taste of tea. In the calm of silence. In the way your own name starts to sound right again when you say it aloud. Mia, I whispered to myself. You made it. A week later, Clarissa called. The annulment's finalized, she said. Legally, you're free. I didn't cry. I just exhaled. Long, steady, certain. Free. Not just from him, but from the version of me that believed love meant endurance at any cost. Time has a strange way of folding itself. It can feel like yesterday and a lifetime ago at the same time. Because sometimes I still catch glimpses of the woman I used to be. In an old photo, a familiar scent, a song we once danced to. But instead of grief, I feel gratitude. She survived something that could have broken her spirit completely. And she didn't just survive. She transformed. One evening, I was invited to speak at a women's support group downtown, Healing After Betrayal. At first, I almost said no. I didn't think I had anything worth sharing. But then I remembered the night I sat on the kitchen floor, shaking, gasping for air, thinking I wouldn't make it through. And I realized maybe someone else was sitting on their own kitchen floor right now, needing to hear that they would. So I went. When it was my turn, I stood before the small group, maybe 12 women, all different ages, all carrying the same kind of invisible weight. I told them my story, not the polished version, the raw one, the truth. How I found out, how it destroyed me, how I rebuilt. And when I finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then a woman in the back whispered, "Thank you." Then another said, "Me too." And suddenly, it wasn't silence anymore. It was release. That night, as I drove home, the moon was bright and full. I rolled down the windows and let the wind fill the car. I hadn't felt that alive in years. A few months later, I ran into Rachel again. It happened at a bookstore of all places. Both of us reaching for the same copy of The Gifts of Imperfection. We froze, then laughed awkwardly. "Mia," she said quietly. "I didn't expect to see you." "Same here," I replied. "How are you?" She smiled. A real one this time. "Better. I started therapy. I moved in with my sister. I even got a job at the clinic again." "That's good," I said, and I meant it. There was a moment of silence between us, not tense, but peaceful. Like two women who had walked through the same fire and survived it differently. Before she left, she said, "You know, if it weren't for you, I might still be living a lie." I shook my head. We both saved ourselves. Just in different ways. She smiled again, eyes glistening. Maybe one day we'll stop being his story and start being ours. I nodded. Maybe we already have. That night, I went home, lit a candle, and finally threw away David's letter. Not out of anger, but acceptance. Because forgiveness isn't about erasing the past, it's about deciding it no longer controls the future. Now, when people ask me what happened, I don't flinch. I just say, I found out the truth. And it set me free sometimes. The truth burns everything you thought was real. But from those ashes, you build something stronger. Something that finally belongs to you. The story ends where it began. With a woman on a quiet evening in a small southern town staring at the sunset through her window. Only this time, the silence isn't heavy. It's sacred. She's not waiting for anyone to come home, because she is home, and that's what healing looks like. Fade out. The screen fills with warm amber light. The voiceover slows, soft and sure. Sometimes you think the end of love is the end of you. But then you realize it was the beginning of the woman you were always meant to be.